Great. Then I think we can get started. The second episode of our Ask Me Anything. And then we have here today Zoe with me. And I'm going to do a quick introduction of Zoe, if you don't mind. And then also feel free to add on anything in the end if I didn't cover anything. And then we're just going to do a fireside chat, having a little chat between the two of us. Great. So let me introduce Zoe a little bit. So Zoe graduated from Boston University with a double major in economics and stats. Before joining the Northwestern program, she worked at BlockTest, a blockchain consulting company providing solutions to traditional enterprises. So she worked on a bunch of really cool projects. And then during the pandemic, Zoe returned to her motherland, China, and then started her own consulting firm in Shanghai, which is impressive. And the consulting firm was offering comprehensive digital consulting services to the medical aesthetics industry. And now she is studying at the Northwestern Master of Science in Machine Learning and Data Science program. And she's also incubating her own startup idea through the Northwestern Garage program, which is focusing on large language models and how that can help meditation. How was that as an introduction? Anything you want to add?
That's very comprehensive. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
And nice to meet you. They just changed the name of the program this year. So I think that was used to call like MSIA.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's basically how we knew each other. We went to the same program, different years, and I don't even want to tell people how many years it's been since I graduated because that makes me sound so old. But yeah, Zoe is still in the program. This is your first year, right?
This is my first year, but I'm going to graduate at the end of this year because this program is only for like 15 months, 4 quarter. I'm doing my summer interns now, and next, like the December, going to be my last quarter in this program.
Yeah, that sounds good. Exciting times. So I guess that might be part of the reason why you reach out to me, because you're about to start your full-time career. So if you have any...
Yeah, perfect timing.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, first of all, like I came from like a not very technical undergrad experience, and I'm in this very technical like master program now, and I like watched through like your like YouTube video talking about like the user experience like research, which like open up my like career directions. For example, how you like figure out like you love this position that focus on like user experience, and because we know like the methodology for data science in general are kind of the same for like your position, but I want to know like which specific like experience made you like fall in love with your like current job, and what is the like specific event, and is there like any decision factor in this progress? That's one thing I'm like really curious about.
Yeah, so just to make sure that I capture the gist of the questions, if there are any one singular moment that makes you want to be a quant user experience researcher for Google. Yeah, really hard question. I would say not so much a single event, is kind of like a compilation of a lot of things. So a little bit more about my personal background is that I also didn't come from a very technical background before Northwestern. So we know that the Northwestern program is pretty technical. A lot of coding, a lot of stats, and a lot of homework. So that was probably the most technical education that I've gotten before joining Google. So yeah, I also didn't necessarily think that I would go into tech if you asked me when I graduated from my undergrad, because I had a finance degree. I was studying business, which is very different from what I do right now. So I would say overall, I have always wanted to be a little bit more technical. because in my head, I believe that that's the best way to persuade anybody to make any decisions. And so one more thing to mention is that Zoe and I both worked in consulting before. And then for me, I have this sense of just uneasiness whenever I make a recommendation just based on subject matters, expertise or recommendations. So in my head, I already wanted to get into tech or something more technical, at least to make sure that all of my recommendations are based on evidence and is as confident as I can make it. So I would say that's probably the genesis for my career change. Not so much a singular event. It's also kind of a long journey for me to finally be in the position that I am right now, because I actually did some stepwise changes in my career, and actually I created a slide, as good consultants would do. So I was mostly in finance, so consulting for real estate and construction. So it's also very different from just technology in general. I would say maybe the overlap is more so for my real estate and construction consulting job. We have a lot of data. So that was kind of like my first pivot when I had to do a lot of data analysis. And that was the moment when I realized that probably if I use more data, then my recommendations are going to be more helpful. So I would say that was, in terms of industry-wise, it wasn't overlapping at all, but in terms of skill set, it was kind of overlapping. Yeah, so
I didn't feel like the same way because I didn't realize a lot of like stuff that I did in my like previous jobs or interns were actually like a very like data oriented, or like we use like algorithm to do like classification. It's just like I don't have like a framework out that is data science. I didn't realize back then.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that's one good thing about studying data science or machine learning or that general area in general, is that it's very transferable, and then you can actually pick any industry that you want to go into. So tech is one industry, but then you can be doing tech work in other industries. For example, you can be doing tech work in consulting, and that was kind of like the in-between for me before I joined Google. So I didn't jump from consulting in finance directly to doing user experience research or data science for a tech company. The in-between is that I was doing consulting for a tech company. So I was doing consulting for IBM. So that was kind of like the in the middle transition. So kind of think of your career as a stepwise change. So there might be overlaps for each change, which will ultimately change your career into the position that you want to. So for me, the overlap was consulting and then consulting to tech. And then the overlap was tech, and then I kind of changed my role, which is not a consultant anymore, by being a researcher. But then I would say a lot of the skill sets are transferable, as you were saying earlier. Like maybe you were doing some sort of data analysis or data science work for other industries already, and those skills are not going to go away. They're helpful either way.
Yeah, that's why I applied for this master program, because I want to go behind the algorithm to see like how it works, to be more technical. But before this, I never thought myself I never project myself to be like an engineer in a way, like very like hard coding style.
Yeah, is that something that you want to continue doing, or what are some other considerations in your career change?
That's one thing like I want to ask you. I'm pretty curious about like your current position. What is like the coding percentage in your like daily role? Because for me, I was like one of my like instructions like were I don't know if you know Alice. She's like she's like the student from the first cohort, and she's like the instruction for like teaching us like Python, Tableau, like all the stuff.
Wow,
and
amazing.
She was giving me like suggestion, as she's not like in tech or like in consulting. She loves like sharing like all or teaching us in a way, like guiding us through like the data science progress. So she told me maybe I should consider like project manager or like sales engineers, because for me I'm not like I don't have passion for building a really perfect product to make the algorithm more and more efficient. But I care like the user behind who are using this. I wanted to build like product that is beneficial to like users in the market. I don't know if that makes sense.
So first of all, I would say there are multiple different paths that you can go down, even though you're in a data science or machine learning program. Me as an example, what is a quantitative user experience researcher, right? And I think the fact that you have the data analysis skill set opens up a lot of doors for you, but you kind of just need to be aware of where the doors are.
So that's something I'm not sure. That's why I want to I don't know what could be the other options.
Exactly.
Because I've been checked for like the different like career paths for like alumni who graduate from this program. Like most of them, like some from like going to like tech, some of them are in like consulting, and they're not. So I just want to see like what could be the options, and like what is the reason like make you like, how did you find you figure out your passion and you enjoy doing this?
A good question. So going back, dialing it back a little bit to the last question about the coding part, I would say it really varies for my role. So for me, I actually do like coding a lot. I just love using Colab, Python, calling large language models APIs and all of that. Like I'm interested in doing that. So I code pretty much, I would say 50% of the time, if not more. Of course, it depends day to day, right? There are certain days that you already collected all the data, so you're kind of just deep in the data one day, and that's like all coding from my side. So for certain days, that might be just like 100% coding. So I would say it varies. The range can be from 0 to 100% actually. But then not everybody in my role will be doing the same amount of coding. So for some people, maybe they're just more interested in doing survey analysis. And for survey, you don't have to code that much. Like there are a lot of tools that you can use already to aggregate the results for you. So if that's something that you're more interested in, then your coding percentage is gonna go down drastically. So
the thing is, I also wanna leverage like my technical skill that I learned in this program. Because I don't know, I think our like curriculum changed a little bit. We have been like deploying like an application in AWS, like build all the pipelines together. And I've been losing hair for doing that because we've been like coding crazily on AWS like last month. That's why I want to know, like as you mentioned, do you work directly like with other researchers, or you work with like project manager, like, or like users, like what's your like team looks like?
Good question. I would say my team at Google, I have to say, this is a really small sample. So at Google, a lot of times I will work with multiple teams, cross-functional teams. So PMs, product managers, PGMs, program managers, engineers who are actually building the product, and also like other people in user experience, so like user experience designers or qualitative researcher. But then I would say that might be a special case for Google because Google is such a big company now. So everything is very specialized. So we have, I guess, the privilege to have so many people being so specialized in so many different roles. So for the bigger tech companies, I would say there is more cross-functional stakeholder alignment that you need to do. And that is part of the reason why I don't code all the time. I would say a lot of times to make sure that your project is successful, you do need to make sure that you align your stakeholders well already, and that can be like 80% of the work.
Yeah, I learned this a lot from more like practical.
Yeah.
Because like most of the time there's like what professor told us, like once we like students from this cohort, MLDS or MSIA, they build like a neural network model for the client. But they didn't understand like the mechanism of the model, so they didn't use that model, even though that like improved efficiency a lot. So I do understand the value of like internal communication, align the stakeholders.
Yeah, for sure. So I would qualify though, this can vary so much by companies, and also depending on your role, because I mentioned earlier I'm more of a user experience researcher, so that means that those are the people that I talk to. I cannot have to talk to everybody, but if you're a data scientist, maybe sometimes you don't need to talk to some of the functions as much, but I would say overall, to really make sure that your project is helpful, you should be talking to all those functions. And in a smaller company, there might be a person who's in multiple roles, but in all those areas are things that you kind of have to think about when you're building a good product, right? Like you want to make sure that the people who have the vision, who are the PMs, are involved in your projects, and then the people who are actually building the products, the engineers, are also involved. But also, if you're not a user experience researcher, you want to make sure somehow your users are involved, right? So that can be through data science, but it can be also through like other titles. But overall, the concept is that you want to make sure if you're building a good product that you have all those elements, like all those people and their concerns and their aspirations all aligned.
Yeah, like I thought, like you mentioned the concept of like the three factors, importance, confidence, and effort. Those are to be considered together.
Yeah. So
into like in terms of making a decision.
Yeah, I'm glad that you saw my last episode. So here's a shout out to my last episode if you haven't seen it.
Because I don't want to ask like the question has been asked before, so I like
appreciate that.
Last night.
Yeah.
So like as you mentioned, like your like position is very like cross-functional functioning. So I'm thinking like which part do you like envision? Which part you want to move yourself further? Like the PM part, or like the engineer part, or like I just don't know like the tunnel for like a user experience researcher, like how. For example, if I'm really interested into your position, how can I build like my career, like maybe like after 3 years, 5 years, like that's my question. I don't know if I confuse you.
Yeah, no, wait, let me see if I understood it correctly. So is the question more so about at what point of the project you engage other functions?
I'm just thinking like what is like not just in terms of like one project, but like how do you like consider your project, like your career path in terms of like the just research side, you want to continue with the same position, or like you want to move to like more PM side or like more engineering side? That's like my question.
No, I got you. Like my career plan, I have to say I'm not too sure at this moment. At this moment, I would say I still enjoy my role quite a bit. I kind of enjoy being the advocate for users and also being able to utilize my technical skills, right? So I would say if you're not that crazy about coding or doing a statistical analysis, maybe this wouldn't be the perfect spot for you. But then if you still want to be an advocate for users, there's also something called a qualitative user experience researcher, where you'll be talking to users a little bit more one-on-one or doing focus groups, or sometimes you also do surveys, but then you don't necessarily have to code to be able to analyze the responses. So I would say that can be one direction for you. For me personally, I think I'm going to stay in this position for a little bit longer. And I would say this field is relatively new. User experience research, it is
less than 10.
Yeah, exactly. So Which means that maybe we don't see CEOs who came from user experience research yet, but it also means that at least within the last 10 years, we have people who have moved up the ladder a little bit. So there is some career progression that you can keep being in this function for some time and level up, basically. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Though I would say there are a lot of challenges of working in a large company, doing alignments and all of that. So I would say if there's anything that maybe I do miss being in a smaller company or even in a startup, that it's so much easier to test things out. You just like throw it in front of the users. But now I think there are just a lot of risks if we did something wrong for Google. Like there is a huge reputational risk. So we need to be very careful about that. So the only thing that I feel like I'm not getting as much as just be more entrepreneurial, be a little bit more risky. But then, of course, that just comes with the scale of the company that you're at. But then going back to what are some other tangential functions that you can look into, I would say PM for sure. Because a good PM would also be advocates for users. And then some PMs actually do their own data analysis a little bit. So if you already have some user information and then your question is just like, how many daily users do I have? Some PMs can pull that information themselves. So you can definitely be a PM, but more so of a technical PM. And being technical is super helpful in a tech company. So even if you're a PM, but you understand how things work and you understand how metrics work and you understand how long it might take to build something, like that builds your intuition of, okay, is it even possible to build this for our users? And then how much work does it go into? And how do I know if it's working for our users? So I would say that's an area that might be interesting for you as well. A PM who is like slightly technical, so you have a better understanding of your users and how the program can go.
In terms of like the technical PM, I never thought about, do I search like just directly search technical PM, or just like when I go through like the job position, they are like have a clear like description about like technical part involved in the daily work?
Yeah, so kind of depends on a company. I would say you can definitely search for technical PMs. And for some company, I remember Microsoft used to have that. I don't know if they still have that right now. With Google, I don't think there is anything that's specifically a technical PM, but then even if you say on your resume that like I'm a PM with technical background, I think that's kind of an advantage for you because you have the understanding of like how to be tech, how to build things and how hard it is to build things and how to measure user satisfaction and all of that. So outside of big tech companies, I think it also depends. For certain companies, they do have technical PM positions, and then for other ones, it will also be like, this is a PM position, but because we're a startup, anybody who comes in needs to wear multiple hats. So if you have a technical background, that's just going to make your case for becoming a PM stronger.
Yeah, that's very helpful because I know because I've been working with like MBA students for my practicum projects, and they got an offer from like Amazon to be like a PM for Amazon. So they don't have like any technical background, but they know like business, so they have more like control over the project, over like the team. So
yeah, so definitely one area that I'll encourage you to look into a little bit more.
Yeah. Also, I have one thing that I want to like ask.
Yeah.
Is that I feel like you conduct along like the journey of the research, you will conduct like a lot of A/B testing, if I get it correctly, and I just want to know, what if like your hypothesis turn out to be like wrong, or there's a pipeline you just want to prove like your hypothesis step by step. There are some like very fundamental like hypothesis or like more very feature specific, as you mentioned. I just want to know, like, because I'm scared of like, what if my hypothesis is wrong and there are like all the cost efficient like analysis around it. So I just want to know, like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say knowing that you're wrong is even better than not knowing you're wrong. So a lot of people think that if the product is proven to be either like unpopular or not performing as well, it's a bad thing or it's slightly scary. But then thinking about the resources that you could allocate elsewhere, knowing that, okay, this one didn't stick. So I would say overall, there's nothing wrong with proving our hypotheses to be wrong. It might even be the best thing that could happen to your team. So instead of like going down the same path, not knowing that nobody is interested, but knowing it early on, you can pivot faster. It can also be small adjustments. So depending on how fundamental your hypothesis is, I would always encourage going after more fundamental hypotheses first to make sure that at least you're shooting towards the right direction. And then once you make sure that at least the foundations are right, it's easier to build on top of that, right? Smaller hypotheses here and there. But one more thing that I will mention is that the whole concept of testing hypotheses is very scientific, and it's also something that the data science function really likes to do. What's special about user experience research, which kind of opened a new way of my thinking, is instead of framing things as hypotheses, you can just come up with a question. Maybe you don't even know how things work. It can just be a research question that, like, I'm curious, for example, let's say we're building Google Maps. Like, maybe I'm just curious, like, do younger people use Google Maps or Apple Maps? And then maybe you also have some reasons of, like, maybe they prefer Google Maps because they have Pixel phones and all that. So you can kind of frame all of those as hypotheses already, but the spirit of it is more so if you frame it as a question, you admit that you don't know the answer. So you can come up with a hypothesis that users use Pixels more than iPhones, but maybe you just don't even have that intuition. You just want to do some more fundamental understanding of your users. So kind of shifting your focus from, oh, I need to make sure that this hypothesis is right, is more so about, let's ask the question, like, do we know anything about our users, and what are they thinking? Why are they doing this? It kind of opens up more vulnerability, I guess, but also like more possibilities to understand your users and build a better product.
As you just mentioned, I feel like you involve like a lot of research hypothesis in your daily job, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever, I don't know how similar that is to like for like a PhD degree, like have you ever think about like doing a PhD after like the master program?
Yeah, well,
no.
Personally, not so much. I feel like I'm learning so much at my job that I'm basically getting a PhD. Of course, it's not at the same rigor, and I would say in some aspects it's a little bit more risky because you are actually delivering products that are changing people's lives in the meantime, just on the fly. So there is something that's more scary about doing my job now compared to being in a more research setting, in a PhD setting, I mean. But I do want to say that for the function of user experience research, a lot of people actually came with PhD backgrounds. So they kind of already have done their more rigorous studies, and then they came to this field. So for me, I self-selected out to not do that path and directly join the workforce. But I think there are a lot of rigor that you will get from getting a PhD. But at this point, I think I have so much empathy towards my users that is really hard for me to just be in a pure academic setting. I'm just curious, and I love being able to hear how users feel about your product, right? So that almost kind of like a community feeling of trying to understand your users for your product. That kind of connection is very special. And that's one reason that I don't think I'm going to go to PhD right now, because I really enjoy having that connection with my users.
So do you think like the empathy for users is the most important thing for like your role, your position?
I would say so. Yeah, like it's almost like when I'm doing research and I'm picking a methodology, in my head I'm thinking, oh, like does that help the users in any way? Like if I ask this question, does it actually mean anything for the users? So that, I think, is a good framework to think about for really make your craft a little bit better. But I think different people probably have different frameworks in their thinking for doing a really good job. But yeah, for me, I think putting things in that perspective really helped me to make sure that my work is of really high caliber. It's just like, if it doesn't benefit the users, why am I doing this? But I wouldn't say that this is specific to my role. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to be a good PM, you should also have that sense, right? Of, am I really adding value to my users? And if you're in a smaller company and you're the CEO of the company, I think that should be the question that you're also asking yourself as well. Like if your product is actually helping potential users, and if not, why are we building it?
Yeah. And I'm curious about, like, you mentioned you have like a lot of like PhD students, people with PhD background came into like this position. Was there like, as you mentioned in your previous like video, they have like a PhD in psychology or like in social science? Is there like a specific like background they are coming from, or like it's very diversified? Like that's in terms of like their position.
Yeah, so I remember there was some stats that was shared during one of the conferences. I can't remember specifically on the distribution, but I would say overall it's pretty diverse. Because I think the most valuable thing coming from a PhD degree is really like how you frame a research question and then you do testing really rigorously. So kind of like that hypothesis testing process. So that way of thinking is very suitable for a research position or a data science position. So no matter what your field is, that rigor is kind of baked into your program. So even when I'm thinking about my coworkers, they really come from all sorts of background, like humanity, psychology, so many things. Some people also come from design, and maybe they did a career change later on in their career. So the possibility is endless, I guess.
Okay, I have just came up a really random question. I just want to know, like, if, for example, the hypothesis here is you will go to like to pursue like a PhD degree, like which degree, like what major you want to like focus on research. I'm just curious. This is a really personal question.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I also feel like I'm slightly out of touch with the academic world now. But one interest of mine is actually in large language understanding or multimodal understanding. So if I do have to go back to school, I think I would love to learn a little bit more about that. Just how do you do just not just even natural language, but just spatial understanding and being able to respond in a very coherent way, either that being like voice or text, or like even images or videos, all those kind of things. I think that's something that I'm really fascinated by. But yeah, I'm not too sure if that will be something that's interesting to everybody. But I would say, like, for some people who are in my function, sometimes they get into like computer science, continuing education, maybe because they want to code more, or maybe they want to understand like certain areas a little bit more. Kind of depends on your situation, really. Another area that I think is slightly interesting to me would be psychology, just because after studying users for some time, it's really fascinating to see like how sometimes users say something but then they do something differently. So like I think finding a reason in that, sometimes maybe you need to go a little bit deeper, maybe going into like human behavior psychology will be the answer to that.
Yeah, in terms of like that, I see like you also post your video like doing like yoga yourself. As like, do you know like Northwestern actually we have like the yoga group class? So it's in like
No idea.
we have that now.
That's amazing.
So we really like we go to like a yoga class or a swimming class between like the classes.
Oh, amazing. That's great. I do think that, and this is not for any role or any industry you're in, I do feel like exercising is just helpful. And and then at Google we have a lot of flexibility, so like even working out during the day, which I feel like is just so helpful for my creativity, because sometimes I'm just stuck, or maybe my code is running and then there's nothing else that I could do, and just being able to do a quick exercise it's just so helpful.
Like when we run like the deep learning model, it took like 3 hours, at least 3 hours to run just with like 50 layers. So we just go chill at the beach or play volleyball together.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That sounds great.
When did you start to like practice yoga?
Such a long time ago. I started probably when I was 16, and at the time, I think there was just a craze when everybody was doing yoga. And I was kind of curious because I didn't like to run. So I was hoping that there is an alternative to that. So I started practicing when I was very young. And then I started practicing with my mom. So yoga to me is kind of a way to connect with people. So that's also part of the reason why I decided to start this channel. It just seems like, I don't know, it just seems so soothing, and I feel like more people can benefit from it, especially there's a lot of anxiety after COVID, like people are cooped up, people have been going through a really tough time, and yoga to me is more than just a workout. It's also kind of like a mentality, right?
Find the balance.
Exactly. So it's been a long time. I'm not telling anybody how long it has been since I was 16 years old, but I just kind of always have yoga at the back of my hand. It's not the only thing that I do, but I do feel like it's something that I enjoy sharing with other people, because I do think of it as just so multifaceted. It's not just a workout. Like even if you can't lift weights, you can still do yoga. Like even if you don't want to run, you can still do yoga. And like when you're sad, you can still do yoga. Like even if you're lying in bed, you're pretty much just doing savasana. So basically there's yoga everywhere. Great. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing like all of that. I learned quite a lot from like your experience, your mentality, and like how could I just structure like my career direction. I think one thing is really like helpful, like that I learned today, is that I have to know like where are the doors so that I can open. So today I just opened the door for you, with you.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that, and thank you so much for reaching out, and thank you so much for doing this so other people can benefit from our conversation as well. Well,
I hope like students for coming for this program could also see this.
Oh yeah, feel free to share it with them. Advertise this for them. I'm happy to share this.
Yeah, I'm just so happy to talk with you today.
Yeah.
And hope to see you soon. Thanks for like sharing all your experience with me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Keep in touch. Take care. Bye.